Okay, next. So we're talking about, so step one in structuring the offer is having this conversation around, okay, what is a price or a payment that the buyer is absolutely comfortable and confident with that reflects in a price. So it's working with Steve to say, Steve, here's the payment that Bob and Sue are confident with. And then Steve saying, okay, here's what that means in price. We're all doing it backwards. You all call Steve and say, Steve, I need a pre-approval for $350. No, you fucking don't. You needed a pre-approval for this price. What does that reflect in payment? What does that reflect in price? Does that make sense, everybody? Okay, because nobody's writing a check for their whole purchase price every month. They're making a payment. I gotta watch my language. Sorry, Julie, you got little realtors running around. I won't do that anymore. Sorry, I get a little excited. All right, the second thing to consider when drafting the offer, okay? So we just talked about the conversation between price and payment with your buyer. You need to start having that conversation. The second thing is around occupancy. I am under the belief right now that immediate occupancy, and these are the talks I've had with some of the boards, that immediate occupancy is going away. And I don't know that for certain, but I believe that in the future, you won't even be able to write an offer with immediate occupancy. But while you still have the option to get immediate occupancy, I am going to make the argument that your offers should have some time around giving free occupancy. And for one reason, Steve, when somebody closes on a mortgage, if somebody closed today, December 15th, when would their first mortgage payment be due?
February 1st.
February 1st. So Mark, that means your buyer has no payment in December, no payment in January. Their first payment isn't until February. So yeah, go ahead, Donna. Let's unmute Donna. I'm going to talk through this.
Yeah.
Okay, and Brandon, this might be for another call because this is about how to win an offer.
Mm-hmm.
But let's put this in a follow-up because I did have one where we waived the free occupancy, and I always have a damages deposit when we do that. So it's probably $2,000 or $2,500. The people then weren't going to move out on time.
Yeah.
You know how it says you're going to pay double your daily rate?
Yeah.
Daily rate's 0.
Yeah.
2 times 0, 3 times 0.
0. Yep.
So that's something, let's talk about that. I mean, thankfully I resolved that one, but for another topic, I think it's good for us to learn more about this whole thing on occupancy, giving it free, and what does that mean to our buyers potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, and I think it's a great topic, Matt. So just mark that down. Is like protecting the buyer, right? So yeah, great thing to consider. So as far as like, I just want people to know how mortgages work, and most new realtors don't. You know, like they don't understand that you don't have a mortgage payment until 45 days later. Well, there's no. I really want to offer this up. I want to know from somebody that people love to challenge people and say, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Donna just did it to me, right? But in reality, can somebody give me a downside to offering 2 weeks free occupancy to a seller? Is there any downside that you guys can think of? Given the fact that Steve just said the first mortgage payment isn't until 45 days, right? So they're not incurring any more costs than they normally would, right? There's no downside. And let me tell you, on the seller side, which is where I spend most of my career, it is absolute chaos when there's immediate occupancy. I don't like putting my seller in a position where they're giving keys at closing. This just really helps the whole stress of the transaction. And removes stress for everybody. I don't see why there's still so many offers with immediate occupancy. In Grand Rapids, you can't even do it. It's not even an option. So that board has removed that altogether. There is no immediate occupancy. And again, I told you guys I've been in conversation with our boards. I believe that will change here in the next year or so as well, because it's too stressful for the transaction and it's unnecessary stress. So the point here is, in step number 2 is when it comes to occupancy, not only do you give it to the seller, but what a great way to help your offer become more of the obvious choice. And there's no downside for the buyer outside of, again, what Donna talked about. There's some potential risk there, but I'm talking about winning the offer, right? There's no downside financially to them offering that free occupancy. And, you could offer as much as 30 days of occupancy and still the buyer not have any downside financial implication. Number 3, Steve, let me ask you, how many when you see these offers, are you seeing a lot of offers being written, number 1, with occupancy? What do you see more of? Offers with occupancy or immediate occupancy?
With occupancy.
Are you? That's good.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the rule of thumb is 60 days, and it's 60 days with Freddie Mac. But something to keep in mind in your back pocket is if you have an extenuating circumstance, Fannie Mae actually allows 120 days of occupancy after closing. And the big thing with that is in lending, occupancy is a big deal. So it's when you move into this home and call it your primary residence. So in pretty much every situation other than a VA loan and a Fannie Mae backed loan, it's 60 days. If you can't occupy within 60 days, it's a rental property. That's their big thing. How they police it, who knows? I mean, most of that stuff doesn't get policed, but that's kind of the rule of thumb is the 60 days.
That's massive. And from a lending perspective, it has to do with how the loan is written versus primary versus investment changes everything. So that's a really good point.